March 20th, 2003. Baghdad. Night falls. Then the sky explodes. Tomahawk missiles, precision bombs, 2,000 sorties in 48 hours. You watched it on television. It looked like a fireworks display. Spectacular. Almost beautiful. They called it shock and awe. They told you it was necessary. They told you it was liberation. They told you they were bringing freedom to an oppressed people. They lied. Those explosions weren't just destroying buildings. They were creating customers. Because here's the question nobody asked. Why do you bomb the infrastructure of a country you claim to be saving? Why destroy power plants if you're liberating people? Why demolish water treatment facilities? Why obliterate bridges, hospitals, electrical grids? The answer is simple. Brutally simple. Because you can't bill anyone to fix something that isn't broken. Welcome to the business model of modern warfare. Destroy, rebuild, invoice, repeat. This isn't a war story, this is a financial investigation. This is what happens when you treat an entire country like a reset button for corporate profit. And the numbers don't lie. $3 trillion spent. $12 billion in cash vanished. 2,000 tons of radioactive material dumped into the soil. Over 300,000 people dead. But someone got very, very rich. And it wasn't the Iraqis. It wasn't the American taxpayers. It was the contractors, the rebuilders, the people who got paid to fix what was deliberately broken. This is the story of shock and awe. Not the military operation, the economic one. Let's start with a concept from economics, the broken window fallacy. A boy throws a rock through a baker's window. The glass shatters. The baker has to pay a glazier to replace it. The glazier spends that money elsewhere. Economic activity increases. Some people say this is good for the economy. They're wrong. Because the money the baker spent on the window could have been spent on something productive. New equipment, employee wages, expansion. Instead, it was wasted on restoring something that already existed. Breaking windows doesn't create wealth, it destroys it. The only person who benefits is the glazier. Now scale that up. Not a window, a country, not a rock. 2,000 bombs. Not a glazier. Halliburton, KBR, Bechtel, ExxonMobil. Shock and awe wasn't a military doctrine. It was economic strategy. Before the invasion, Iraq had infrastructure. Old infrastructure, yes, damaged by years of sanctions. But it existed. Power plants, water systems, roads, bridges, hospitals, functional, operational. The first wave of bombings didn't just target military installations. They targeted the infrastructure, electrical grids, water treatment plants, communication networks, systematic destruction. By the time the invasion was complete, 70% of Iraqis lacked access to clean water. 70%. This wasn't collateral damage. This was the plan. Because once you've destroyed the infrastructure, you need to rebuild it. And rebuilding requires contracts. Billions of dollars in contracts. Contracts that went to American and British corporations. Bechtel got a $250 million contract to rebuild Iraq's infrastructure. KBR, a Halliburton subsidiary, got contracts worth over $39 billion. Not to build something new, to fix what was broken, by design. Here's how the mechanism worked. Iraq's oil industry was nationalized. The Iraqi government controlled the oil fields. Western corporations couldn't access them. After the invasion, the Coalition Provisional Authority restructured Iraq's oil sector. They introduced production sharing agreements. These agreements allowed Western oil companies to extract Iraqi oil in exchange for fixed service fees. ExxonMobil, BP, Shell, Chevron, they all got contracts. The official narrative was that Iraq needed expertise to modernize its oil industry. But Iraq had been producing oil for decades. They had engineers. They had experience. What they didn't have was a destroyed infrastructure that required foreign intervention to rebuild. So the infrastructure was destroyed, then the contracts were signed. Destruction creates dependency. Dependency creates profit. Now let's go to the crime scene. The Coalition Provisional Authority, the temporary government the U.S. established in Iraq after the invasion. They had control of something called the Development Fund for Iraq. This was Iraqi oil revenue, held in trust, meant to rebuild the country. Between 2003 and 2004, the U.S. flew $12 billion in cash into Iraq. $12 billion. In $100 bills, shrink-wrapped, stacked on pallets, loaded onto C-130 cargo planes, the largest cash transfer in history. Why cash? Why not wire transfers? Electronic payments? Traceable, auditable transactions? Because cash disappears, and disappear it did. Of that $12 billion, $8.8 billion vanished. No receipts, no records, no accountability. Gone. The Inspector General's report called it the largest theft of funds in national history. Let that sink in. $8.8 billion, just gone. Where did it go? Some went to contractors who billed for work they never did. Some went to ghost employees who didn't exist. Some went to Iraqi officials who took bribes to award contracts. And some just vanished into the chaos. One example, a contractor received $2 million to build a police training academy. When inspectors visited the site, they found a building so poorly constructed that human waste was leaking through the ceilings. $2 million. Sewage dripping from the ceiling. Another example, the U.S. paid to equip and train the Iraqi army. Thousands of weapons were shipped. Records show they arrived. But when auditors checked, the weapons were gone. Sold on the black market. No one was held accountable. This wasn't incompetence. This was systemic looting. The war created chaos. The chaos created opportunity. The opportunity created theft. And the theft was built into the system. But the financial cost is only part of the story. There's another cost. One that doesn't show up in budgets. One that will compound for generations. During the Iraq War, the U.S. military fired between 1,000 and 2,000 tons of depleted uranium munitions. Depleted uranium is a byproduct of nuclear enrichment. It's extremely dense, perfect for armor-piercing rounds. It's also radioactive and toxic. When depleted uranium hits a target, it burns. It aerosolizes. The particles spread through the air, settle into the soil, contaminate water supplies, and it stays there for billions of years. After the war, cancer rates in Iraq spiked. Birth defects increased, particularly in areas where heavy fighting occurred. Fallujah, Basra. Studies found uranium contamination in the soil, in the water, in the bodies of residents. The U.S. government denies any link between depleted uranium and health problems. But the evidence is overwhelming. This is what economists call an externality, a cost imposed on others. The corporations that manufactured the weapons got paid. The military that used them achieved their objectives. The cost, cancer, birth defects, poisoned land, was borne by the Iraqi people for generations. This is the toxic asset, the hidden cost, the debt that will never be repaid, because you can't invoice future generations for the cancer they'll inherit. Let's talk numbers. The war in Iraq cost the United States $3 trillion. Not the $50 billion they promised. $3 trillion. Where did that money go? Some went to military operations, salaries, equipment, logistics. But a massive portion went to private contractors. At the height of the war, there were more contractors in Iraq than U.S. soldiers. Security firms, logistics companies, construction corporations, Blackwater, KBR, DynCorp. These companies billed the U.S. government at rates far higher than what the military would have paid for the same services. A military cook cost the taxpayer around $30,000 a year. A contract cook costs over $100,000. Why the difference? Profit margin. The war was outsourced, and outsourcing is expensive, but it serves a purpose. It hides the true cost of war. Contractors don't appear in military casualty statistics. Their deaths aren't counted. Their costs aren't transparent. It's a shell game. And the house always wins. Here's the system. Step 1, destroy the infrastructure, create the need. Step 2, award reconstruction contracts to corporations, create the supply. Step 3, bill the taxpayer, extract the wealth. Step 4, leave the country before anyone audits the books. This isn't a bug, it's a feature. War isn't about liberation, it's about market creation. You destroy a power plant. Then you charge $200 million to rebuild it. The power plant that existed before the war cost $50 million to build, but now it's rubble. So you charge 4 times as much. Profit margin, $150 million. Multiply that across every bridge, every hospital, every water treatment facility, every electrical substation. Billions of dollars, all of it flowing from taxpayers to corporate balance sheets. This is the broken window at industrial scale. And the people who broke the window are the same people who sold you the glass to fix it. Meanwhile, Iraq was left in ruins. Over 300,000 people dead. Some estimates put it higher, much higher. Millions displaced. Infrastructure destroyed, economy shattered. The Iraqi government was left with debt. Massive debt. Debt that had to be repaid to the very countries that invaded. This is neo-colonialism with a new face. You don't occupy the country permanently. You don't need to. You destroy the economy, impose debt, and extract resources through contracts and agreements. The result is the same. Wealth flows from the periphery to the center, from the weak to the strong, from the invaded to the invader. And it's all legal, all justified, all wrapped in the language of liberation and reconstruction. So here's the verdict. Shock and awe was never about military victory. It was about economic restructuring. You can't restructure a functioning economy. So you destroy it first, you create a blank slate, then you rebuild it according to your specifications. Iraq's nationalized oil industry became privatized. Foreign corporations gained access. Contracts were signed. Iraq's infrastructure was demolished. Contractors were hired. Billions were billed. Iraq's sovereignty was shattered. Debt was imposed. Dependency was created. This is the business model of modern warfare. Destruction is demand. Reconstruction is supply. And the taxpayer funds both sides of the equation. The corporations profit twice, once from the weapons that destroy, once from the contracts that rebuild, and the people who live there, they pay the cost in blood, in health, in a poisoned future. $3 trillion, $12 billion in cash vanished, 2,000 tons of radioactive waste left in the soil, over 300,000 dead. And the people who designed the system, they walked away rich. No one was prosecuted for the missing billions. No one was held accountable for the uranium contamination. No one was charged for the inflated contracts and phantom projects. Because this wasn't a crime. This was policy. War is not a military operation run by generals. War is a commercial cycle where destruction is demand and reconstruction is supply. And in that cycle, the house always wins. You were told this was about weapons of mass destruction. There were none. You were told this was about terrorism. The terrorists came after the invasion. You were told this was about liberation. The country was destroyed. The only truth is the money. And the money tells a clear story. Follow the contracts. Follow the cash. Follow the corporations. The explosions you saw on television weren't fireworks. They were invoices. Every blast was a future contract. Every destroyed building was a billing opportunity. Shock and awe. Shock the country into submission. Awe the taxpayer with the bill. And walk away before anyone asks where the $12 billion went. History doesn't hide the answers. It just buries them under official narratives and classified documents and complicated jargon. My job is simple. I show you where to dig. The rest is up to you. If this investigation exposed something you didn't know, subscribe to this channel. If you want more deep dives that follow the money and reveal the mechanisms behind the headlines, hit the notification bell. And if you think someone else needs to understand how modern war really works, share this video, because the truth doesn't spread itself. The numbers are there, the evidence is there, you just have to look. See you in the next investigation.